right, everybody. Now we're with Mindy Indy, and we're talking about her new comic book she's working on, Aer Head. Hi, Mindy. How you doing today?
Hi, Frank. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's very exciting.
That's great. That's great. So you've been working on this Aer Head. Can you give us a little bit of a description of what Aer Head is all about?
Okay, well, the first thing you need to know that it is spelled A-E-R head.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it sounds like the term airhead, but I mean, it has a double meaning because it is a comedy. It's a sci-fi comedy. And the
Right.
main character's name is Air. That's short for Ario Zephyr, and he is a teen surfer and lifeguard. And he struggles to control his ESP and psychic powers. Like he can sometimes see the future in his dreams, but like he can't control it at all. But one night he predicts that a solar flare, an unnatural, supernatural solar flare, is going to wipe out the Earth. And so try to warn people and save people. That's the main story arc. There's a lot going on in Airhead.
Hmm.
They're like, there's a love triangle. There's like many characters are introduced because this is the first issue.
Right.
And the second issue, we get like more into like the side stories, the backstories of the characters and stuff. But yeah, I mean that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Okay. Uh, so let's break down what it is to be a comic book creator, much as we have in the past with other comic book creators. It's one of the reasons we just love hearing from you guys.
Mhm.
Is it's so fascinating all the things that come behind this. Uh, where did the idea for Airhead come? Like, what brought it to fruition for you?
My gosh. So I've been working on this series a really long time. And I first created the characters in college. It's just grown over time. And I mean, in my Kickstarter video, you see me like cooking the ideas like in
Yeah,
the
that's
yes.
such a great video.
Thank you. I loved making the video. It was awesome. But so anyway, very first sketch I did of the character of Air was I was sitting in class in college. It was a lecture series because they
Mhm.
brought like these artists in to talk about their art or whatever. And I was doodling, of course. And I was seeing this guy in front of me that had a bandana. And I really liked the way his curly hair curled over the bandana. And so I drew that character, and that was the very first. And it's funny because I was at home like a couple years ago and I like came across that sketch. I was like, "Oh, this is the origin."
Yeah.
And so it started with the sketch. All the characters started with characters of V at first, and then I did a little animation of them using powers. Blogged about this in the a recent Kickstarter update. I had posted the original animation. Well, it was like a demo reel that had clips of that animation in it. But it at first the style was like super anime style. I mean, like,
Yeah.
okay, this is a debate. Like, is Airhead anime? Is it not? It's definitely influenced by anime, but I would say that it's much more influenced by the American style than when it was when I first created it. So I started with the animation. It was just them using their powers, and then I made a comic.
Hmm.
The core roots of what happens in Airhead. It has like Air can't really use his power. He has the dream of the solar flare. Like all that was way back in the comic years ago. And then in 2010, I had kind of relaunched it because like after graduating, I just tried to get a job and I was doing a bunch of other stuff and it was kind of the thing where I had set Airhead on the side. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be my big series, but I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to do it like later." I don't know. It's just like you just try to get by and enjoy life and
Yeah, it's just something you're always kind of thinking about in the background of like, okay, what can I do with it? But while you're still living life, yeah.
yes. And so then I decided to move to New York City in 2010. I'm from Michigan originally.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and so then I moved to New York and I various other things, but one of them was, on the side I was revamping the story of Airhead and I added a lot more details, a lot more like backstories, the characters changed. I added new characters, I took away some characters. Um, and then, but 2010 was a while ago, and I have been freelancing. It was always kind of in my mind,
Yeah.
and I had decided, I launched a Patreon of this last year, and I had decided do this now. I'm never going to do it. And
Right. Yeah.
yeah, it was like, okay, how many years have I been working on this? And it's like,
Yeah. So you've been workshopping this your entire life, or not entire life, but for over a decade. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
it's one of those things where like for other comic book creators, it may be just like, oh, I saw something and it gave me this idea, which for you was the bandana, but and so they
that
get to
was a
work right away. But
catalyst.
for you, yeah, but for you had like this long process of really fine tuning who these characters were, who should be in the world, who shouldn't be in the world, and kind of really solidifying this idea that you had.
If I had fully completed that story in 2010 somehow, it would be a different story because I've grown as a person and I've matured. Um, you know, uh, I scrapped a lot of stuff when I decided to like redo it this time. I it was hard, but I decided, and that was part of what was like holding me back, is that I don't want to start from scratch, because before, how I wrote the story was like my sketchbook, and then I would storyboard it, would draw the page. There was no writing step involved at all. But then
Right.
I realized in the past few years that if I want to cut corners, I need to letter it digitally, because before, like the 2010 version, but it took forever. And so from there, I'm like, well, if I'm going to have to digitally letter it anyway, I might as well write the whole script.
Exactly. Yeah. At that point, you might as well take it all in your own hands.
And because you're going to have to write that anyway if you letter digitally. And then, like, at the same time, I was joining a writers group and they weren't even comics people. They were just like in a writers group. And they have writers groups, all over. And you can join like a local one but anyway, so it was great to get feedback, and it was easier to change the script when it was just a script. And I'm like, oh, I don't have to like I can just add
Right.
something,
Yeah.
take away something, I can switch some things around very easily. And even then, like, still like a back and forth process, like as I'm drawing the pages, because it's not 100% drawn, it's maybe 75% drawn,
Hmm.
and for issue number one. And I might be like, oh, Era would say that instead of that, or maybe like it like this, like maybe he would joke around a bit more or something, like when I draw it, because after you draw it and then you see how the script could be better. And so then when I finally hand it off to a letterer, which is my first stretch goal, by the way, and that'll be uh that'll be easier uh for them.
So that's one thing that is sort of unique in the situation is you're the writer and the artist, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a creative control that a lot of comic book creators don't have, and I like the idea that they're bouncing off of each other for you. So you're writing something,
Yeah.
and then when you put it to art, you're like realizing I need to change the writing to really adjust. That's awesome. Next up, I was wondering, is there any other comics that you've worked on in the past, or is this your first one?
So when I exhibit in Comic Cons, I have done some short stories. The most recent short story, it was like a collection of short stories. It was called Other Realms.
Hmm.
And that one I worked on with a writer, Patrick McAvoy, and it's in the same sci-fi genre, but it's not comedy. It's actually like very serious, and it's like computers are taking over the world, and like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really, it's about the pros and cons of technology. It's like technology is really great,
Hmm.
but you have to be careful, like, basically. And so what this was, my first go at printing an actual comic sized comic. But yeah, that was cool. That was like a level up for me, because I'd never done that before. He had found me at a small comic con, and we were kind of like trying it out, like with a one page story, like seeing how we worked together. And then eventually we had enough, and I'm like, why don't we do a collection of these? And to kind of fill the book out, why don't we also, like, because he was the writer and he sent me the script for the comic stuff. And at the same time, I was doing mainly from Inktober, which is happening right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Inktober is awesome. Inktober got me started on doing some daily drawings. And of those drawings, I picked some sci-fi ones and I was like, how about you a story based on this drawing? And so it was kind of like a back and forth for that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was the most recent cool thing that I did.
Is there any other comic books or comic book creators that have inspired you in the past?
So I would have to say the number one inspiration is Rumiko Takahashi. This is mainly for the humor. Especially Ranma Half. So Ranma Half, are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah.
Yes, oh, I love it. And so it's just her quirky humor and all these characters and all these like ridiculous situations and
Yeah.
just the and even so the first graphic on my Kickstarter image on my Kickstarter page is this image of like a surf pyramid kind of thing because it's like air at the bottom and then it's like how acrobats like form a pyramid. It's kind of like it's just ridiculous. It's like no way could the characters actually be like that, but it's just fun.
Yeah.
It's just a fun image, and that was influenced by how would she would always have all these like pans of all these characters like um just doing a bunch of like celebrating and like a party, and they were also doing martial arts and they were like juggling random stuff, and it's just fun. um
It's yeah, it's one of those pages that you kind of have to stop and just like take a moment to really appreciate every little piece that's in there. It's a collaboration of so much.
yeah, and there's a Daft Punk animation called Interstellar 5555,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was the coolest thing. I mean, that I had seen to date. I mean, like Sailor Moon blew my mind when I was like a kid, but like then it's like, oh my gosh, this is combining techno music and anime, and I love this.
Okay, so looking over what pages we have in the preview, going from the style point of view, we have, to me, it reminded me so much of this like 80s cartoons, like maybe Transformers, something like that, where it's really kind of these purples and oranges playing off of each other, the heavy shadows and everything like that. It really brings you back, even the way the waves are done. So was like the 80s punk feel kind of what really drove you in this?
So the it's funny because a lot of people say that, but that wasn't the main driving behind this style. But I did want it to look like an animation, and I wanted to be an animator when I was little. I wanted to animate for Disney.
And it feels like that too. It feels like you're watching like a Saturday morning cartoon, and yet it still has more of this kind of like adult tone too, where it kind of spread pretty wide its audience. But yeah, it does give that vibe off of like you're reading a cartoon essentially.
Oh, nice! Reading a cartoon. That's gonna be my be like a promo or something.
Yeah.
Hashtag that. Or retweet it.
Especially, I'm looking here at the third page. I'm going over the pages as we're talking. The third page here, where you have, I want to say it's his teacher essentially coming in to interrupt him, but the way the panels are laid out it's almost like it is in animation. You
Uh,
you see the way it goes, and even like the zoom in on the face, which is very anime style, on the teacher's face, and it just the way it reads is like a cartoon. It's perfect in that way.
Appreciate that. Yeah, and I like to draw with a lot of movement,
Hmm.
and I like to draw dynamically because change up the scenes a lot. Like, you have a close up and then you have a medium shot, and then it pans out to being far away, and then
Right.
the setting. And oh, and by the way, that is actually uh is Professor Pipsy, but that is actually his adoptive dad, but he calls him Pips as a nickname.
Okay.
Their relationship is like super laid back. Um, but I'm wondering, I don't know, it's in my mind he's always called him Pips, and it seems weird to call him dad.
Yeah, it's almost
Oh.
like um a cool uncle aspect on top of being a dad. Does that seem right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
One thing I like too is you play a lot around with the traditional comic book paneling, and you actually kind of bend it a little bit to where it almost challenges how like if you look for like the staples in comic books, it would be like Watchmen or something like that, which has these very strict to 9 panels. When
Mm-hmm.
this one doesn't do that, this one even bends panels, turns panels, and opens things up to where it challenges the reader to read in a different way. And again, I think that brings it back to that animation style. Was that kind of your choice to really change up how things are done?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, like particularly, especially with um on like page 2, like where he's like sitting there and then he's daydreaming, and then those series of panels are very wave
Yeah.
dream. Like I definitely want that to have a different feel as well. So and that, like, it's more of a montage. Borders are like dashed lines, not solid lines. They're more fuzzy. Appreciate that you appreciate my panel layout.
Yeah, panel layouts. It's funny because it's kind of like the utility part of the comic book, and a lot of people when they don't pay attention to it, but it is affecting how they read it.
Hmm.
And for your work here, and I'm looking also at this one right here, this page that I'm excited to see it in full color, where everything's done in bubbles, and so you're seeing it like it's actually in the top one we have immediately after, and we
Yeah.
see Air is kind of like taking a nap on the dining table, but everything below that is it a dream? Are we seeing his thought? Well, it must be a dream, and just the way it's bubbled down is it's almost like he's descending into his own mind. It's really it challenges the way you think about how the characters are being portrayed. And then the last page I really want to make sure to pinpoint is this one with the I don't know how to describe this, but the puzzle piece page, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
The missing puzzles out of the people and stuff like that. I'm like, this is like how a director wants to do things. It's
Oh, thank
it's
you.
very cinematic. This particular page especially is so cinematic to me. And I'm interested in seeing the rest of this comic just because it's really breaking the norms and in a very interesting way where it's emotional based and it's telling a story
Mhm.
just by its placement. So I think that's something that being the comic book writer and artist is giving you such an advantage.
Okay, so yeah, I love that page too. And yeah, I think if I was communicate that to, I don't know, to somebody else to draw, that would be kind of hard. But because like there's a kind of synergy there where and it's kind of funny because I added the puzzle pieces later on.
Oh, but they're so essential. It's amazing that those are added later on.
It just makes it more trippy, like too, because
Yeah,
it's just fun. Yeah,
it
sci-fi.
it just gets you thinking too, like, oh man, like what does this mean? And it just it gets the juices going in the mind while you're reading. So I love it. It's
Yeah,
perfect. All
yeah.
right, so let's go ahead and wrap things up with your Kickstarter campaign and how we could all help. Uh, can you break down the different tiers that you have to the Kickstarter campaign?
Okay, yes, I would love to. So, I have a variety of rewards ranging from $5, which is the high five, and that's where you get your name and a thank you page and a screensaver.
Hmm.
$10, the hang 10. Huh, get it? Yeah, hang 10. For all those who don't know, that's when the surfer hangs over the board with like all his toes. So yeah, whatever. Well,
As a California boy, I'm assuming everybody knows
yeah, yeah, that's
that.
right. You guys are in California. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah, so we're like, wait, who doesn't know what Hang Ten is?
well, I mean, people could be listening to this anywhere. So
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, that's true. And in New York, we have a very vibrant surf community out there in Long Beach. And yeah,
Hmm.
but you might not. It's kind of like the hidden secret of like the surf world. But anyway,
Yeah.
tiers. The most popular tier is the Surfs Up reward for $25. This is oh wait, oh I forgot to describe the Hang Ten one.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, you did.
So I was so excited about the title. So so Hang Ten is that you get all the tiers build upon each other.
Right.
So Hang Ten, you get the previous tier plus a digital download of Aer Head #1. And the most popular reward, which is the $25 one, surfs up previous tier plus a physical copy of Aer Head #1.
Okay.
And then the wave tier for 40, you get everything plus an Aer Head fold out poster print. And this is because when I was little, I would get Sonic the Hedgehog comics and they would have a poster inside sometimes, like for the
Right.
specials. Yeah. Which is cool to get a poster that was folded inside. Now and also like from a practical standpoint, it's just easier to mail than like a larger print.
Right. Right.
All
Right.
right, so the hang loose tier is for $100. And that is everything plus a color sketch of you, friend or family member, with like a beach theme. It could be like surfing or like
Oh,
being
that's cool.
by a shark. Okay, so we also have the far out tier, which is $250. And this is everything else, including a page of original art from Aer Head, because it's hand drawn. So there are physical pages. I know that these days, like a lot of trade digitally, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But I feel like it looks better when it's hand drawn. So you get a page of original art, which is pretty rare these days.
That is, yeah, that's amazing.
So the $500 tier is called the Ultimate.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it really is the ultimate tier. It's everything, it's all the other tiers plus Tuckerization, which is you get yourself drawn in the comics. So there's a crowd scene at the end with the surf competition. And so you'll be at the surf competition, drawn in the crowd there. So you'll make an appearance in the legendary issue of Aer Head #1.
That's amazing. Yeah, then you're actually in the comic book, and I mean, if you're a comic book reader, that's what you've always wanted, right? You've always wanted to be sitting there, so
Yeah.
that's perfect. That's great. Uh, what's your overall goal with the Kickstarter? Is it for the first comic book, or are you trying to create a series out of this? What is your goal for the Kickstarter?
It's definitely a series. So it ends on a cliffhanger. A
Okay.
pretty big cliffhanger at that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's very action packed. So technically, right now, the comic is already funded, and I'm aiming for the stretch goals. And by the time comes out, I'm not sure how far along I will be, but there will be some days left in the campaign.
Hmm.
And and the stretch goals will allow me to hire like a letterer and other people as well, finish the comic faster. But yes, there's definitely like I'm thinking right now it could be like an 8 to 10 issue miniseries. Um,
Okay.
but there's definitely a lot there. And actually, in my Patreon, I have a lot of other like side stories. So there's a side story where like Air goes and he's out surfing, he like almost drowns, but then he gets saved by mermaids.
Hmm.
That's like a whole other like side story that has nothing to do with with the main story, but it's like just for fun, and
Yeah. Oh yeah. Might as well.
yeah. So yeah, that was inspired by when I went to the mermaid parade here in Coney Island.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if they have one in California. I think that's the only one like.
Yeah, that sounds pretty unique. I don't, I don't think we have it
Oh
over here.
yeah,
No.
yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, if you ever happen to be in New York when they have it, it's definitely get out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. All right, everybody. Well, that's going to be it for us today. Make sure you guys check out the Kickstarter for Aer Head, and we want to thank Mindy for joining us today. Thank you so much, Mindy.
Well, thank you. This has been great, and I hope that people really like Aer Head, and thank you for checking out the Kickstarter.
Yeah, links will be in the description, guys, and then we will continue on with the show.